This time on Roadkill, 4 guys, 5 days, a bunch of unexpected problems, turns into
the dumpster fire Daytona!
Yeah!
All right, so this is my 1969 Dodge Charger, which I bought in Michigan last summer at our Roadkill Nights event. And pretty much I bought it because it looks like an old NASCAR that somebody butchered into a Pro Street car, and to be honest, it's not an old NASCAR. It's a fake. It's not a real Dodge Daytona. It's just a very rusty, butchered Pro Street version that I could afford. And I bought it because I like the way it looks. Problem is it needs one of everything, including new torsion bars. We had to cut these in half to get them out. We also had to redo the brakes and the front suspension and the steering. But my friends are here, and the next 5 days, we're gonna make it run and drive and do burnouts. I have a dream. I bought this at Roadkill Nights. I'd like to drive it back to Roadkill Nights. And pretty much I bought it for the visual. From like 30 feet, your average human thinks this is a really, really expensive Dodge Daytona. From 29 feet, it's junk.
This is doo-doo.
But I'd like your opinion before we get started. You know, in 5 days, can we make this run and do burnouts?
I would say no, except for that you got some stuff done before we got here, like the brakes and wiring and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, the bones will be made up of old Roadkill project cars. We have the engine out of the Death Metal Charger 383. We have the trans out of Blasphemy.
Yeah, clutchless 5-speed. That's what this thing needs.
Yeah. And then we have the Dana rear end out of the Rubber Duck Firebird, which we know is already bent. So
it's perfect.
Why not use all of that stuff? I have 5 days and 2 Legends in my garage. We're fine.
But on first glance, I mean, I thought this may be a real Daytona.
Really?
What? Yeah.
For those unaware, the 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona was a specially built model just for NASCAR. Like, for NASCAR, you had to have a production car sold to the public, and Chrysler really wanted to win, so they developed a really aerodynamic package just to win NASCAR, and then sold them to the public. They actually didn't sell very well because they're ludicrous cars. They typically don't fit in a normal garage. The claim to fame is this was the first stock car for NASCAR to run 200 miles an hour. Buddy Baker did that at Talladega and then crashed and burned. So it's perfect.
Well, that's not gonna happen to us.
No, we'll be good.
I guess swing the motor in.
Pull the nose off first. We're gonna have to get all this junk out of here. This thing is rusty. It's got a fiberglass nose on it, fiberglass wing.
Scratch the paint.
Not the fresh paint. I think we can get over.
Sounds like a machine gun fire. Coming down slowly.
This is new. I've never done this before.
That's a Roadkill Garage norm right there.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, we're up against the firewall with the flange of the bell housing.
Those wings on the pan
right.
are interfering with their installation.
Yep.
Otherwise, it would just drop right down.
Uh-huh.
This is going to be a lot of cutting.
Okay.
You might as well just
cut it.
Just cut it now.
Oh, if only we had put an automatic transmission in here. That motor would already be installed. It would have just bolted right in. But we didn't. And the problem with that is it's longer and taller, and it's hitting the floor and this cross member. And the cross member is here because it not only attaches the floor to the frame rails, but it also houses the torsion bars, which hold up the entire front end of the car. It's kind of important. And we have to cut it out.
All right. Out she comes. Okay, come down.
Going in there. We're gonna cut from here to here as a starting point, then put the motor and trans back in and see, do we have to cut anything else? There we go. Fixed.
Coming down. That was good. Sort of our methodology here is we're gonna take the engine and trans in and out a whole bunch of times until we've cut the floor enough to get clearance for the transmission. How's your fitment? I can see it through this hole.
It's good all the way back here.
I was hoping to just eyeball where we have to hack for the transmission and then take the trans off, mount the engine, and do the trans again.
Just like imagining being in the trench or something in World War I.
All right, we're gonna have to take this trans and bell housing off so that we can slip the engine in because the oil pan is hitting the K-member, and once that's in, we're gonna try and muscle this trans up and figure out where else we have to cut the floor.
It's pushing the oil pan forward like 2 or 3 inches. It means the clutch can has to come off. Good, right there.
Yep. You're good. Bingo.
In, stop.
Wow.
Okay. Okay, we're picking it back up so we can crawl underneath and make the transmission fit. Looks like that's gonna go.
Wow.
Great, that was awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Wow, I hope that this rusty frame rail doesn't collapse while I'm under here.
So David's jacking the transmission up right now to greet our big block Mopar, which is in place in the engine bay.
We got the transmission in so that we can start eyeballing, cutting out the floor, and so we can build a trans cross member, but we wanted to install the headers so that we can get the engine in exactly the right place before we mount the trans and lock down the position of all this stuff. The headers that Finnegan got are from TTI, which is a company I usually recommend for Mopars. These, however, are their shorty headers. The plus to this is they fit super easily.
Yes.
The downside, Steve,
Power loss.
these kill power. We tested them on Engine Masters that, hey, it's Finnegan's car. He doesn't like power that much. Oh, hi, Mike. Look how easy that was.
Yeah, the dipsticker tube is in the way, though.
Motor and trans are in, kind of. The motor's mounted, the trans is just kind of floating in space back there. We're pretty sure we're gonna have to cut the floor of the car, but we don't know how much. So what I'm gonna do is put an angle finder on the rocker of the car. I'm gonna zero it here. Then I'm gonna go to the motor and put it on a flat part of the motor and see what is our angle of our engine in relation to the rocker, because this is really the only level surface of the car. And so we kind of want to get the motor somewhat close to level, maybe a little down. We are about 3 degrees down. That means the back of the motor is tilted down. And in order to get it level with the rockers, because we zeroed this on the rocker, we'd have to raise it up about that much. That's about 3/8 of an inch in the middle of the motor, which means the trans probably has to come up about an inch to become parallel with the chassis. We're cutting more sheet metal. That's what's about to happen. Okay,
1.8.
you can go up some more, Dave.
Yeah, this shifter stud is hitting the floor already right there. It's 1 finger away right here.
Time to put the shifter in. We're going to the old tried and true H pattern, which everybody knows and loves. You know, if you know how to drive stick, you probably learned on an H pattern. Same deal, rods and levers, bolt to the side of the trans. Well, it took all of 8 seconds to figure out, not only does the shifter not clear the trans tunnel, but the shift rods don't clear the trans tunnel either. So we're gonna have to cut this further forward and we're gonna have to cut this further backwards. I think our trans is lined up where it needs to be. We need to make a trans mount because now our shifter's in, that's clearing. We have Swiss cheesed our floor. We move forward, we build a trans mount, start eyeballing our rear end problems. This is the makings of a ghetto fabulous transmission cross member. You know, if it was a race car, it'd be round and be much lighter, but this is not a race car. This is a roadkill car. So I took whatever scrap I had laying around, butchered a notch into it for the spine of the transmission. We'll put this up against our floor, put a bolt through the cross member that we already cut that is definitely rusty and not secure. And this is what will hold our transmission from falling out of the car. Don't do this at home.
Hey, I'll give it a shot. I think that's pretty close.
So far, we dropped in the engine and trans. In the next 4 days, we need to completely fabricate a rear suspension, order the drive shaft, do a complete fuel system, finish brake hard lines up here and back there, battery cable starter, starter relay, oil pressure line, oil, trans fluid, rear end gear oil, throttle, pedal and cable.
All I heard was blah, 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 burnouts. No problem. Look, we can do this, man. We can do this.
So if you finish the trans cross member, I think Steve and I should rip the whole rear end out of the car so that we can get the new suspension fabbed in the rear end in so we can order a drive shaft and get that here in time.
All right.
Okay, ready?
Almost there.
This is gonna be a speedy down. That was some technique right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next plan of action is to put the wheels and tires on the new rear end, which came out of Finnegan's Rubber Duck Firebird. These tires we just installed are a ProTrack 445 5015, huge by large. The idea of this being a Dana 70 is gone. You can usually look at the web of a Dana rear end and it'll have cast in it what it is. And it clearly says it's a Dana 60. It's just a big beefy one. What we're gonna do next is roll the rear end under and jack it up and make sure it fits the wheel tubs and then start to fit the leaf springs. With the rear end rolled under the car, we sort of eyeballed the situation here, and what we decided to do is leave the leaf springs where they are rather than outboard them on the frame. That's gonna end up putting the new leaf spring pads right up against the cast center section of the Dana 60, and then you have to fit a U-bolt, so we're gonna grind away some ears on the casting and put a U-bolt right over the casting. We'll have to get a bigger U-bolt made for that.
I love this saw. So this is our transmission crossmember. Kind of looks like a spaceship. That's always fun. This part bolts to the transmission. This part is gonna bolt to the crossmember under the floor that we hacked in half. And the way that's gonna work is we're gonna run a bolt through this and then through the crossmember. And I've cut this piece of tubing. And this is what my bolt's gonna go through. And I'm gonna slide that tube in the tubing. And then I'm gonna weld it together. And once the tube, the round tube, is welded to the box tube, this becomes one unit, and I can tighten the bolt as much as I want, and it's not gonna destroy the tubing. Everything I just did to that crossmember, which was drilling holes through it, welding in these sleeves, now I have to do to the crossmember in the car. So Steve is laying under there with a right angle drill, trying to get to the free side, so that then we can put these in there, TIG weld them in place, then we're done. With the crossmember, not the car. All right, you're through.
We're starting to position the rear axle in the car. Steve's gonna hang the spring in the shackle.
Everything has to align just perfectly.
I don't even care if it's not fast. It just looks cool.
Let her down. Mike then needs to go forward. There we go. Ah, perfect. Mine, there we go.
We have a plan. This rear end is gonna work. So what we're gonna do is unbolt the leaf springs, remount the shackles, outboard the frame rail, build a new mount up front for the hanger, and then we can finally put the weight on the tires and see the stance and be like, yeah, high five, look at those meats. Bo's happy, I can tell.
Okay, that sounds like a good plan.
All right, let's take it apart.
Yeah. We're moving the springs outboard by one spring width. We took them out of this bracket right in here, and we're moving them just to the outside, and we will still use this. Mike is right now using CAD to make a new bracket that will go right here to hold it.
We did some cardboard data drafting, and now I'm gonna cut this out in the vertical bandsaw, run a drill bit through the original holes in it so that we're sure they line up, and then we'll be done.
Finnegan fabbed up this great bracket, which is going to move our leaf spring from right here to right here. But the thing is, to weld it in, you really want it straight. You don't want it flopped out this way or that way. So what I did is I made these pieces of tubing that went through the old bracket into the new ear right here, and then made a spacer with a nut and bolt, which holds it all together. So once this is welded, it'll be in perfect alignment to grab the leaf spring.
Good day. Freiburg and Dulcich killed it. Rear end obviously is not in the car, but we're very, very close because now we at least have front brackets to mount our leaf springs. We'll build the back ones tomorrow. It's bedtime. Going to bed. Done.
Good morning from the palatial Finnegan estate. You can do anything here, but we're doing it slowly. The list is still long. Those guys are out at storage place picking up parts so we can finish up the rear suspension, but I still have this list to do, so I'm gonna start whittling away at that. Engine compartment's where I'm most at home, so I think I'm gonna start bolting headers on, and those guys can finish up the suspension once they get back.
I'm really excited about these. These are used Centerline Combo Pros, and we stuck Mickey Thompson ET Street Skinnies on the front. Perfect for our Pro Street car. Yep, it rolls.
I think the torsion bars probably have no tension in them.
Hey, but it's still in one piece. Here's our plan. We're gonna take the leaf springs out. We're gonna drill new holes for the rear shackles 1 inch further forward so that when it's sitting at ride height, the shackles have a little more rearward angle. And then we're gonna make new mounts so that we can move the leaf springs out more to the frame rails, giving us plenty of room to put that giant Dana 60 center section under this car.
There we go. Just got that skewered, and now Finnegan's gonna come back, cut that to length, and weld it in.
I can't approve of RTV on a valve cover gasket. No. Finnegan wants to install a tunnel ram on this. As a matter of fact, we got one from eBay. So I'm gonna go open it and inspect it and decide if we're installing it or not on our short deadline. Tunnel ram scenario, this falls under the category of completely optional. Ooh, this is an old one too. This is a Wyand tunnel ram for the 383 Big Black Chrysler. See how it says "Say Y and" on the logo? That is the older one. So this thing is legit. Now, the real time consumer on the tunnel ram is not so much the tunnel ram itself, but the linkage. And he got a couple of carburetors. Are not really tunnel ram carburetors. These are single 4-barrel race units. This is gonna be a Holley XP 750 double pumper. We're gonna put them on sideways, as all good tunnel rams should be. Uh-oh. All right, we're not using this tunnel ram. That game is over. So this is such an old tunnel ram that it's only drilled for the bolt pattern for an AVS type carburetor or for inline Holley. So the sideways mounted Holleys are not gonna work. See, they'll mount inline, but 2 of them won't fit because the float balls will hit each other. So that's game over on the tunnel ram. I made spark plug wires and battery cables happen, and Dulcich is fixing the alternator bracket. Now I have to move on to some wiring. Finnegan had a friend go through the car and actually wire all the headlights and turn signals and all that stuff. It's kind of crazy. And he also wired the stuff off the factory ignition switch according to the colors of the factory 1969 Charger wiring diagram.
Oh yeah, no, we're good. We're
Really?
good.
Oh, that worked out perfectly.
Nailed it.
Is that in the middle?
Ish.
So you have 3.5 inches from tire to spring, and this has 3 inches. So push it 1/4 inch. That might have nailed it. I mean, there's still the spring dangle,
11 years
but
of
it's pretty
soccer.
close.
Was Bruce Lee here?
Okay. All right, ready for axle coming down? That, okay?
There we go.
Yeah.
So right now the guys are throwing U-bolts and spring pads in there. We don't have all the parts to actually lock this in place. We're missing the bushings for the back of our leaf springs. Those will be here tomorrow. But tonight, we can at least clamp this together and set it on the ground and be fully motivated to keep going, because we only have 2 days left. What we have here are the finest 445 tires money can buy. We want them to fit in here without hitting the quarter panel like they're doing it now. Now, if we just lower the jack and let this hit the ground, the wheel's gonna go back, but not before it caves in the already dented quarter panel. So I'm gonna clearance it. Okay.
Okay.
All right, going down for the stance.
Ooh.
Boom.
Dude.
It's sitting on the quarter panel here in the back.
It is?
Yeah.
Dude, I have all the room in the world back here. Dude, look at the wing and the big tire and...
That's pretty good.
It is so cool. This looks awesome.
It's a big meat.
Oh, man.
Ooh, ride's good. We need to crank up this torsion bar like crazy.
I love it. I absolutely love it.
Me
We get to
too.
cruise this, dude. We get to cruise this.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, this is badass. I love crappy cars.
Well, you've reached the pinnacle.
Dude, I know,
And it's actually good.
like
Yeah.
we literally just built the crappiest version of the coolest muscle car ever.
I think if we crank up that torsion bar, you might solve some of your tire problems.
Oh, yeah. One of the things we noticed when we got the car on the ground on its mean tire and wheel combination is that it's sitting kind of cattywampus, so we've got to do something about that. Fortunately, a Mopar's got adjustable torsion bars, so all you have to do is go underneath, adjust the adjuster, and level her out.
Stop. Now do the other side. Oh, this tire's ramrodded into the quarter. After all that measuring and fiddling and bending in the back, trying to center the rear end, we decided that that was all ridiculous because we don't have bushings in the leaf springs, and there's a bunch of other problems where it just needs to be tight and final installed before we really measure anything. So what we're gonna do now is pick this up and put it on race ramps to get it up off the ground and measure for our drive shaft length. But when we do that, we have a new surprise for you, and it's really good.
Crawled under the car to measure it for a drive shaft, and I discovered we can't put a drive shaft in this car because there's a cross member here. And I never really paid much attention to this cross member before, especially not when we were welding leaf spring brackets to it. But basically, this rear cross member is the backbone of the rear suspension. Tomorrow, we get to do major surgery on this.
Thursday morning, and I'm leaving for a vacation trip on Saturday, so we have 2 days to do all this. I just made a more detailed list of everything that we need to do, and we went through it and marked off the optional things, stuff we didn't need in order to do burnouts. My job's gonna be engine. Steve's working on bolting in the steering column. Finnegan's working on that pinion angle and drive shaft, and you'll see another guy here in the background, Joe. He's helping us all day long, so you'll see him.
In the interest of forward progress, I'm trying to lock the rear end in place. Currently, the rear axle is just sitting on the leaf spring pads on top of the leaf springs loose. We'd like to lock the rear end at least side to side and set the pinion angle. Well, the way you do that is by welding the axle tubes to the axle pads. We can't do that until we figure out, is our axle centered so that the tires don't hit the quarter panel? I don't want to measure the leaf spring because this stuff is all crooked still because it's not tightened up. So we're going to measure from the ruler to the tire on both sides, shift the rear end, I think, this way, tighten everything down with the U-bolts. When we're sure the pinion angle is correct, we'll weld it. So right now we're taking the trans back out again to put the clutch back in that we removed earlier. Once the clutch is in, the trans back in, we have a yoke on its way. We'll put the yoke in the back of the trans, then measure for our drive shaft, which our local guy will get done today.
I finished most of the wiring except for charge wire and starter wire, which is holding on other things. So I'm gonna go ahead and install the carburetor. We got this, the Holley 1850. Old school, 600 CFM, vacuum secondary, mechanical choke. Look at that. You know that's gonna come into play. This thing is gonna save me some time because it has a single fuel inlet. The typical high-performance Holley carburetors that we use are dual feed, and it just takes more plumbing to do that. And the aftermarket kits that you can get to go into those generally ram right into a big block Mopar distributor. So this is gonna be good enough for Finnegan to do burnouts. Quick tech tip, when I install a carburetor, I like to work the throttle linkage, and don't forget to do it on the vacuum secondary as well, just to make sure that the blades are not hitting the manifold and the linkage is not hitting the outside of the manifold. This one seems flawless.
I wanted to finish up the steering column, but the guys are working there, and so I'm going to move on to the radiator. What I have is a Griffin aluminum radiator that replaces the original copper brass radiator. Now, when you're putting in an aftermarket part, you have to expect a little finessing to get it to work. The fans are ramrodded right into the water pump, so that's not going to operate like that whatsoever. So the radiator has to come forward. I think we can modify, cut off these flanges, and when we're all done with that, it's just going to be nuts and bolts and wires, and all of this is going to function exactly as the manufacturer intends.
Mike and Joe got the transmission and the clutch back in, and we got it jacked up in position, and Dulcich and I were able to measure the drive shaft. Finally, they're gonna turn it around in 1 day, so we should get that done. I'm in the middle of ordering a bunch more parts from Summit Racing that we need in order to wrap this thing up.
Right now, Dulcich is at the front of the Charger, cutting up my mint condition core support to put a new radiator in.
We're just going to try to find space, a millimeter at a time, pulling that radiator back little by little until it fits in just as if it was made for the car. Well, in fact, it was made for the car, but that's a story for another day. This is going to be our trial fit. We made a few modifications to the core support. It should gain us a little clearance. That's a complete win.
Yeah.
Nice work.
Man, I'm glad I got that together.
What we have here is a visual representation of how this build is going. This is the starter that was on that 383 when it was in death metal. It does not work. Brand new AC Delco unit also doesn't work. Why? Because the headers we bought won't allow either one of these to bolt up. I went all the way to my other shop and grabbed 3 starters from Blasphemy. One of these has to work. All right, that's not gonna work. It does not work. It's also really far.
To people at home, if you have a 383 and you buy the shorty block hugger headers from TTI, they won't tell you that there's only one starter in the entire world that will work on this, and it's made by some guy at his home garage, and you know you're not gonna find it. So there's your warning.
We're supposed to drive this tomorrow, but I don't think that's happening.
Steve's still working on the valve cover. Mike's underneath. You can hear him starting to zap the whole chassis back together. My job is break hard lines throughout the entire car. And by hard lines, I mean potentially soft lines. This is a -3 AN line that is crimped specifically for brake pressure. And, you know, they've said forever that you shouldn't use a bunch of this in your brake system because they expand and give you a squishy pedal or something. I'm not buying it. So I think I'm gonna try and do that everywhere that I can. It's sort of a hunt to find fittings and stuff. Other cases, I'm going to build hard lines. You can see my template here for making that happen.
You guys want to feel way better?
Sure.
Suspension. No.
Incomplete. A lot of stuff is started, nothing is completed.
Well, brakes.
No.
But you can scratch that one off.
What?
Valve cover gaskets. Done.
Valve cover gaskets. Done.
That's one more
Dulcich.
off the list.
Dude, you're a legend.
No exhaust.
Yeah, no. I'm just gonna put this back over here and focus on what we did accomplish today, guys. Tomorrow will be way more victories.
Well, right now, sleep, maybe.
Good night, guys.
It went really good today, though. I feel good.
Hi there. It's the same day.
I know I went to bed, but I woke up on the same day.
It's morning.
Punch drunk, tired.
Producer Taylor went to Knoxville. He went somewhere in Tennessee last night, met a Roadkill fan, and found these, which means Any of our 6 starters will now work on this car.
Yes, from none to all, right?
We got to remove the headers and install stock manifolds. Back to work, lots to do.
All right.
It might seem like one step forward, 2 steps back, but what I'm doing is I'm taking off our carefully installed shorty headers and putting on these, the factory 440 HP manifolds. We tried every single starter known to man, and none of them would fit with those shorty headers. With this, I can put practically any starter, and it'll fit no problem at all.
Right now, Joe is in the back of the car finishing up the fuel cell mount. I have to modify the fuel cell to actually make it fit our Pro Street car. And the reason for that is our rear frame rails are very narrow. The problem is it normally mounts in the car like this. Like if that's the front of the car and that's the back, it goes between your frame rails. Our frame rails are so narrow, I have to turn it like this. The problem with that is the outlets for the fuel are no longer at the back of the vehicle, which is where you want them. As the car accelerates, gravity, acceleration, all that, it's gonna make the fuel go backwards. So what I'm gonna do is cap these off. I'm gonna drill a hole at our new back end of our fuel tank. Weld that bung in there, and now we can put an outlet fitting in our hose where we need it. All right, that's not gonna leak.
Here's sleep deprivation in action. This is so stupid. Dulcich is walking by this morning, noticing something. He says, Freiberger, do you have the line lock going to the rear brakes? It's like, yes, I do. The line lock obviously is supposed to go in the front brakes. If you don't know what a line lock is, you step on the brakes, you press a button, it locks all the pressure to the front brakes, releases pressure to the back brakes, and you can do a burnout because the front end's locked up. You really want to eyeball that the drum brakes have the smaller reservoir and are typically in the front in the master cylinder, and the disc brakes typically have a larger reservoir and are typically on the back of the master cylinder. And I was feeding that line lock from the front. So I will be rebending this Picasso of a line. And it'll probably actually look better, and I won't trap a nut on it.
We tried a bazillion starters with the other header, and there was no way any of them were gonna work. So we put the stock manifolds on, and right now this starter is gonna drop in place like it was made for the car.
We're ready to set our drive shaft angles, and it's actually a perfect situation where we're able to set the pinion angle because the spring pads aren't welded on yet, and we're able to move the transmission up and down to get that just right. Here's the situation with U-joints. They want to operate in equal and opposite angles. Imagine that the pinion in the rear end is perfectly level with the ground, and so is the transmission. You can see that the drive shaft is going to be at the same angle on both ends. It's just that the angularity is down here on this end and up here on that end. And so what you have to do is make that happen in the car, which can be tricky. And remember that you also want the rear end pinion on a sprung car, not on like an IRS, to be down a couple degrees more than is required, so that when you're accelerating and the pinion climbs the ring gear, that it ends up being in the right place. Now we're ready to check the angularity from the transmission to the drive shaft. Now the way we're gonna do that is with a little angle finder right here, and I have to use this little surface right here. And I'm gonna hold the angle finder to it. Once I have it zeroed on the transmission, I move it over here to bottom dead center on the drive shaft. So what I've got here is 0.6 degrees. So what that means is essentially the transmission center line is even with the drive shaft. It's 0.6 degrees down, but you really want more than that. Now, the reason why it's almost flat is because this car has huge tires on the back. You can see that a tall tire would move the back of the car up, and then you have to move the axle up to move the back of the car down. When you do that, you end up putting the transmission and the pinion almost in line, which is a problem because a U-joint doesn't want to operate at 0 degrees. It wants a couple degrees on it so that it doesn't have sort of a flutter to it. Now we're going to move to the back and adjust the pinion angle, which I can't do right now because we've got that cross member hitting the drive shaft. So maybe I'll ask Finnegan to cut that out and we'll carry on.
Okay, drive shaft can go back in.
0.1. 1. Okay, that's good. Now this. Okay, we're good. Man, it's a process. We just spent like half an hour measuring and triple measuring everything we need to set the pinion and transmission angle and make a transmission spacer. Mike just tacked the spring pads onto the rear end housing. I'm gonna go tighten all the U-bolts up, which will squish everything together and might change the pinion angle a little bit. Then we'll jack everything back up. Then we have to take the whole thing out, fully weld the spring pads, refabricate the cross member that we cut out, and then put it back in, figure out the shocks and the shock cross member.
I don't know what time it is, but we're supposed to be doing burnouts by now, and it's been one little thing after another. It's just eating and eating and eating at our time. Like right now, I need to connect the pedal to the push rod to operate the master cylinder. That's gonna take time. Freiberger had to make brake lines. Finnegan had been getting his rear end ready to go in. There's all kinds of stuff, but you know what? We're gonna make it. We're gonna make it, we're gonna get out there, and we're gonna do our burnouts. Even if Freiberger misses his vacation, we are doing burnouts!
Burnouts are not happening tonight. But on a positive note, we can cross stuff off the list. Rear shocks, we bought them, they're here. Oh, did you guys replace the leaf spring bolts?
Yep, done. Rear end's almost back in.
Cross that off. The hard line to the T on the rear axle?
Close. Victory.
Wow. For the first time, I think we might pull this off. This is great progress. This is all that's left to do. I've already done one thing this morning. It's 7 a.m. It's not the same day as when it was the same day yesterday morning, but it's the same day as when it was the same day last night at 3 in the morning when I went to sleep.
That's this morning.
We're gonna try desperately to get this all done and get at least one burnout in today.
I think by noonish today, this will roar to life. I'm gonna put the shifter in. This straight stick from Long Racing Shifters is what I ran during Drag Week 2019 when Tony Angelo and I set the class record and won with this transmission. But it's a little too far forward in this car, so we're going road race style with this kickback shifter. And then we also got a new B&M shift knob, which is bigger than our shifter, but all the inserts for it are smaller than our shifter, so this is not gonna go on. I'm gonna install the G-force knob, which is gonna fit, but doesn't have a button, which is a bummer. So now I'm gonna have to put like a micro switch on the stick to activate the line lock.
I'll let that run out.
It's time to remove the front part of that roll bar. We'll just cut it and bend it till it breaks off.
Now watch this. It's barely welded on, and it's made of 1.5-inch tube, which isn't legal for any sanctioning body anywhere. Ha! Ha!
One of the last things we gotta do before we test drive the car is adjust the shifter, which is kind of a process. Essentially, the way this works is you're moving the lever here, but then there's 3 rods down here that turn 3 separate levers to engage the gears. To adjust it, you slide this pin into these 3 rails. Once it's in there, what you're looking for is the ability to slide the pin smoothly in and out. If it does not slide smoothly through each one of these rails, then you turn these rods, which have left and right hand thread heim joints in them, to release a gap here and here, forward and backwards, and eventually this will be smooth. And once this is smooth, that allows you to bang shift this thing real easy. This is a clutch assisted transmission, which means in first gear, when you take off from a stoplight, you use the clutch. After that, you should be able to just rip this stick and go right into the next gear.
Up,
Up,
down,
down,
up.
up.
That's cool.
What do you think?
We can fire it up and go for a ride.
Daylight.
Oh,
All right.
This car rolls. This car stops. Here we go.
Wow, runs good. There we go. Stop. Gas leak.
Fuel filter.
Dude, when do you think the last time this car ran was?
Never?
I don't think it's ever run.
Probably sometime long before they decided to cut it up and do all this.
Yeah. Dude, that was 5 days.
This one's cinched down. We need to
This
get
is
another
clamped
hose
all
clamp.
the way down and not clamped enough. We're gonna see if it still leaks.
Ready?
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're good.
Motor seems happy. We got oil pressure, we got water temps.
This thing is our bestest, trashiest car ever. It's already been driven like 4 miles and nothing has gone wrong. So of course, we head to the burnout. Yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
2-tire fire.
Oh, that was great.
That was cool.
So awesome.
I was really worried
Wow.
that the diff was open based on what we were doing in the shop, but
Yeah!
clearly we got 2-tire fire.
It works! See, I told you it wasn't an open diff. Look at that.
How come you didn't grab second?
Oh, I don't know, I forgot. 5 days.
I made it happen.
We did. No kisses, all right?
Wait till you see it in the next episode of Roadkill, where we drive that thing to Roadkill Nights.
This is a recipe that always works. You buy the very worst example of your favorite car, get a bunch of used parts you have lying around, lock your friends in the garage for a week with the only goal being to just make it run and drive. We did that. In fact, the dumpster fire Daytona actually does burnouts. Sure, she's not perfect, and she does need a little refinement, which we're gonna do off camera before road tripping this thing all the way to Roadkill Nights in Michigan, and you're gonna see that on an upcoming episode of Roadkill.